to the Pilgrim on the 405 with Will Christ. Join him as he and his guests discover how businesses thrive in California.
Well, welcome to the Pilgrim on the 405 on this beautiful sunshiny day in Southern California. We have a very intriguing guest today, Ted Miracco, the founder and CEO of CYLYNT, a cybersecurity company in Los Angeles. So Ted, welcome to the Pilgrim on the 405.
Hey, Will, it's great to be here. I have been listening to your podcast for a while now. I'm really enjoying it. Don't have the same commute that I've had in the past because unfortunately we're still working from home. But hoping to get back out on that 405 in the not too distant future, and enjoying the companies that you're bringing visibility to here in our in the Southland.
Well, great. So tell us a little bit about CYLYNT. What does CYLYNT do?
Okay. Well, CYLYNT is really about protecting intellectual property. And I think it's very relevant, your audience here, because Southern California does have such a creative community. And I think a lot of people hear the term piracy bantered around a lot, particularly because we see a lot of it, in the film industry and with the music industry. And that's not what we do, but we are focused on a different piece of piracy, which is focused more on the software angle. So I think a lot of people know that not all software out there is genuine. There's a lot of counterfeit licenses and counterfeit products that are out there. We're specifically focused on the business to business side of software, and we work with some of the largest software companies in the world to try to protect their valuable intellectual property from piracy. And these are the kind of tools that are used in critical industries like the defense industry, semiconductor industry, automotive industry. A lot of it is involved in engineering type applications, but our technology is broadly applicable. And we're kind of on the forefront of basically trying to help customers identify who's using their intellectual property without proper licensing and helping them recover that revenue that's being lost every day. And sadly, a lot of the piracy is a global problem. But one of the things that I think we'll talk about a little bit today is the particular challenges with China. China is one of the worst offenders when it comes to IP. They're certainly not exclusive. We have offenders all over the world, but one of the things we'll probably get into today.
Well, all right. So your technology will protect software, and you use the word IP as well as software. So is there other areas that you can help folks with?
I kind of talk about software and intellectual property interchangeably. There are also ways, we basically develop telemetry tools, and those telemetry tools get embedded into applications, and in this case, software applications. But we've developed some new technology to try to identify more file-based intellectual property. And that could be more broadly applicable to, one of the areas that we're particularly interested in is semiconductor IP. A lot of talk about the semiconductor industry. It is all basically, bits and bytes these days. The semiconductor designs are developed with these CAD tools, and then they can be very easily exfiltrated from the people who are developing them and reused without licensing. So that's another thing that we're tracking.
So I can appreciate how you would track and prevent piracy, or at least alert people to piracy from software. But semiconductors, you talk about the design then, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we're going to be able to track the design. We're not going to be able to track the chip itself. So a lot of these chips end up being manufactured in Taiwan at some of the big fabs in Taiwan, but those fabs are using electronic design files to produce the chips. And those electronic design files can contain things like watermarks to try to identify who was the creator of that IP, and is that IP being manufactured with the proper licensing. That's one of the things that we're very focused on and very interested in. But more basic to that is the design tools that are used to create the chip design. It takes very sophisticated software to develop these chips. And my first startup here in Southern California was actually a company that did electronic design automation software. And our EDA tools were being pirated, widely pirated, all over the world, but especially in the Asia Pacific region. And we had no way of fighting that. We had no way of, I would go to board meetings and our investors would ask, they'd say, "Hey, Ted, how much of your software is pirated?" And we had no idea. We couldn't measure it. All we could say is a lot. And we looked for solutions to this problem, and there was nothing available. The company that was developing our license manager, they kept claiming that the next release would make it more secure and they'd be able to protect our technology. But inevitably, we would find on the internet that literally within days of a new release going out, there would be another cracked version out on the internet, and people had free access to an application that we had lots of PhDs working, weekends and long hours developing this technology, and we had legitimate customers that were investing in this technology, and then we had a lot of people that were just using it for free. So we finally decided that nobody was going to solve this problem for us, and our engineers had to solve the problem. So we developed our own in-house reporting mechanism. We just called it affectionately Phone Home, based on ET.
Right.
And we had the software. We put a feature in it to check for updates. But we also, in addition to checking to see if there was a new update or a new patch for the software, when it phoned home, it reported a serial number so that we could tell who the licensee was. And I'll never forget the board meeting that I showed up with. We had one board member who kept asking, well, how many people are using pirated copies? And we always said that we don't know. So finally, I showed up at that board meeting, and they were like, so Ted, can you tell me, how many people are using pirated copies? And I said, 60%. And the board member said, what? I didn't hear that. Did you say 6%? And I said, no, I said 60%. He says, I didn't hear you. Did you say 16%? I said, no, 60. So it was 60%. 6 out of every 10 users of this very sophisticated design tool for designing, and this is used to design chips that would go into electronic warfare products, into guidance and control systems, into cell phones, and into satellite communication systems. So used very extensively throughout the industry for communications and for defense electronics. 60%, 6 out of 10 users was using a counterfeit license. And guess where most of them were?
Must be China.
Well, yeah, China, we had a over 99% piracy rate. Our friends in Russia, 98%, piracy rate. But it wasn't just, our military adversaries that were using, cracked licenses. We had 70% piracy in Taiwan, similar in Korea. Parts of Europe, we had extensive piracy, particularly Southern Europe, Italy and Spain, and Greece and Turkey. We were experiencing, close to 50% or 50% and more. The United States was not completely innocent. Believe me, I think we were over 25, 30% in the U.S. And parts of Western Europe. So we had all of this data start coming in, and we were trying to figure out, well, what do we do with this? How do we, how do we, and again, we didn't know what we were doing. We weren't lawyers. The first mistake I think we made was we filed a lawsuit against one of our. We noticed that also, in addition to the users of our tools, all of our competitors were using counterfeit licenses. So they were trying to catch up with us. They were trying to reverse engineer some of the tips and tricks that we were particularly good at. And that all came to light with this phone home technology. And that was, you know, that was a long time ago, but to this, so that was the inspiration. That was really kind of something we developed at my first company. And yeah, the mistakes we made in the beginning were numerous. We filed some lawsuits without really understanding fully copyright law or data privacy, or, you know, some of the other things that were imperative. We learned some lessons along the way, but ultimately we were able to start to get these infringers to, you know, not only purchase licenses, but to become really valuable customers. So it wasn't an acrimonious. A lot of these conversations were not acrimonious. You know, some of them were, but in a lot of cases, when you bring this piracy situation, especially to the attention of senior management, they would have employees in their organization that had downloaded and installed these illegal versions on their network, and they were unaware of it. So they were like, thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is a vulnerability. This is a network vulnerability and a legal liability that you have brought to our attention, and you've solved it for us. So we created valuable customer relationships when we started to have those conversations, and we did get to the very top of the decision-making authorities in some of these companies. So it was really the gift that kept on giving. You know, this data gave us huge market intelligence and insights into what was going on, and it allowed us to solve problems.
So it's interesting. Would you say that the problems, that some of the problems were solved by moral suasion rather than a legal imposition?
I would say that emphatically. I would say that at least 9 out of 10 was solved through a what ended up being a constructive discussion amongst business leaders and executives at both companies. Maybe 1 out of 10 ended up in with more serious, and not when I'm not saying 1 out of 10.